What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video, and back with the final ADP update of the offseason. Every Saturday, we've been going over the most important news, biggest risers, biggest fallers in drafts over the last week. This is the last one. Week 1 content will be starting on Monday. As always, with this video, a reminder, I record these Saturday videos Thursdays at noon Eastern, so I'm not expecting any big news that'll really impact things, but Mattison, if Hunt happen to get traded or there's a really big injury between now and upload, I don't know about it. You can check my Twitter at NickZylakFFA. You can ask my thoughts on the Discord, which everyone is all in on the website has access to. And if you're watching this the day of your draft, good luck. And I'll mention everything that I think you need to know in this video. And if you want to see my exact rankings, every scoring format, different league sizes, you can see that at my website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. And for those of you who have all in access, please remember, or if you have the draft package, if you're drafting on your computer, please use the conditionally formatted rankings page. A lot of people ask, they're like, well, how do I cross players off? There's a tab that lets you do that. So please go in. You just have to copy in the rankings to that tab, but it's very easy. I did that for the two drafts I've done so far. All you do, copy it into the first, basically cell of that document, and then you can cross players off as they get drafted, highlight your team. It's very simple. So, who has been moving the most this last week? Obviously, Dameon Pierce is going to take the top spot. No one's going to pass him. But we don't need to go over him in depth for the 100th week in a row. Very quick case in case you have not heard. Clear cut, running back 1 for the Texans. He's now the running back 24 off boards. He's now going in the 7th round. I think in most drafts, you're probably going to have to take him in around the 5th round this weekend. And I'd feel comfortable doing that. I don't know that I'd go into the 4th round, but if he's there in the 5th, you really want him. That's probably, unless you're in a league that people aren't really paying attention, they're only going off the pre-draft rankings. If you're in a league where people are at least somewhat paying attention, you're going to have to take him in the 5th round. And again, I'd be fine doing that. 2 other risers are Mike Davis and Kenyon Drake, both signed with the Ravens now that Gus Edwards is on the IR, Tyler Batty was cut, and Dobbins is close to returning, but he's obviously not going to be 100% to start the season, so they need a little bit more depth. Now, I've been getting a lot of questions about this backfield, and I'm not really sure why everyone is so intrigued. So let's just work backwards from the end of the season, right? So to close out the year, the most valuable weeks in fantasy, when you kind of want your players spiking, as of right now, it would be a 4-man committee between Dobbins, Gus, Drake, and Mike Davis. And so obviously you wouldn't really want anyone there. Probably Dobbins you'd want the most, but it wouldn't be a backfield that you really want to be attacking. Now, I know we're not drafting for that scenario. You're drafting right now being like, maybe I can get some points early in the season with Drake or Davis. But that to me is kind of like a best ball take. Draft them late in best ball, sure, because maybe, I don't know, you get 2 or 3 okay games from Davis or Drake. Maybe one of them happens to score, happens to catch 2 or 3 balls, and maybe they're in your starting lineup for that week. It helps you. But for you, for most people, they're doing redraft, right? Almost all of you are in redraft leagues. And you're going to be drafting them as your running back 5, running back 6. So you're not starting them. So what is the point of drafting Drake, drafting Mike Davis, if you know at best they're getting split workload in a 3-man committee with basically no targets? And they're on your bench because you're not even starting them. The first time you'd ever start these people are when Gus is finally returning or when Dobbins is now very close to 100%. And so it's I just don't see the intrigue. There's a lot of really high upside running backs in the later rounds that are clear handcuffs, clear backups that have a ton of upside if the starter goes down. I'd much rather roster that than someone like Mike Davis or Kenyon Drake. They don't make much sense to me. Isaiah McKenzie is going up again this week, but he still doesn't go early enough. You should still be drafting him in all formats, Underdog, redraft leagues. Please, if you have a draft this weekend, draft him. He is basically a full-time slot receiver on the Bills, but sometimes he'll work in and out with other players. But he's also going to rotate in on the outside. So before we thought he was a part-time slot receiver, now it's it's close to full-time slot receiver, plus sometimes he'll take snaps on the outside. That boosts his value. If Diggs got hurt, if Davis got hurt, he'd be a 100% snap share player working on the inside and the outside, getting some carries, just an all-around player on one of the best offenses in football. Really high floor, really high ceiling. you definitely want to get him. It's not easy to get Bills players in drafts. He's the easiest one. Take advantage of that. Isaiah Likely is also up again, and I have the same words of caution that I had last week. He is still a backup rookie tight end, and unless a rookie has been named Kyle Pitts, rookie tight ends never break out in fantasy. They're never someone you're consistently starting. People were even annoyed at Kyle Pitts last season. The dude had like 1,000 receiving yards. That's not going to happen with Likely. He's still, again, backing up Mark Andrews. I know he'll see the field a ton, but he's not going to out-target Andrews. He's probably not going to out-target these wide receivers in the team, even if we don't have a lot of confidence in them. He's a fine pick on Underdog because maybe he'll have some spike tweaks. But again, everyone in redraft leagues, I really don't think you need to be spending a late round pick on him because the odds that you are starting him in a redraft league are incredibly low, unless you're in like a 16-team tight end premium league or something like that. The only other big time riser this week, at least ones that like mattered, wasn't going from like 230 to 200, was the Miami running backs. Chase Edmonds up maybe a little bit less than half a round, and Mostert's up about 8 spots. This comes obviously after Sony Michel was cut, and so their depth chart is Edmonds, Mostert, and then Gaskin and Ahmed. We've been trying to target Edmonds really all summer. The rise in ADP obviously makes that, less viable. It's like more difficult to get him, but he's still someone I want on my teams. After Sony got cut, honestly, we gained even more confidence in early down workload. He's going to have targets. Like, he still remains a really good pick. Still not going early enough in drafts. The one question mark I've kind of always had is around Mostert. I've never really known exactly how to value him. I think we're going to talk about him a little bit on Monday, so we can reserve some of this conversation for then. But the odds are, at least my guess right now, is that he has a similar workload to kind of what he did in San Fran. Maybe he's going out there and getting like 8 to 10 carries each week, being pretty solid with those carries, but he's never someone they want to overload. They don't want to give him 17, 18 carries because they know he'll break down. And so just keep him fresh, 8 to 10 carries, maybe sees a target here and there, that sort of role. Unlikely if you're in like a 10 or a 12 team league that you're consistently starting someone like that, unless you're in a standard scoring format, which many of you are not in. So I'd say half PPR, full PPR leagues, you could use him as maybe your last running back. Maybe they're forced to go to him a little bit more if there was an injury to Chase Edmonds. But assuming health for the whole backfield, I don't really think you want to be targeting most. I think there are higher upside backups. But, he's not a bad running back. It's going to be a solid offense. He'll have a role, so not a bad pick by any means. Big-time fallers. Only have a few. Obviously, number one is Brian Robinson. If you somehow do not know, he was shot twice earlier this week. One, I believe, the glute, one in the knee. The latest reports are that, first, he's lucky to be alive, which is fantastic, but he's lucky with where the bullet went through his knee. So apparently, it missed the bone, missed ligament, missed tendons. Like, I don't even know how that's possible. So obviously that's great news. As of recording this, I don't have an exact timeline. They kept him on the 53-man roster, which is great. Again, though, we don't know. He could still be put on some sort of IR list, non-injury football list, or non-football injury list. Like, there are still things that could happen. But as of right now, none of those have occurred. So it opens the door to a potential return over the first month of the season. Again, I have no idea what's going to happen. So make sure you keep an eye on Twitter. I think this is a situation where we're going to learn more very soon, but I have no idea. So again, watch Twitter, follow Scheffner. We're going to find out. I think it's 32 Beat Writers is probably the best source, but go into who I'm following, follow a lot of those people. You're going to get that information. In terms of drafting him this weekend, obviously it's a risk because we have no idea what's going to happen, but he was looking like the locked-in starting running back before this occurred. And I have to imagine once he's worked back to 100%, which it's leaning like is going to happen this season, that he's going to be the lead running back. And since there's risk with drafting literally any player where he's going, which is the running back 51, early 14th round, like, how many sure things are there then? Like, how many people are you actually starting in that range? So even if he misses time to start the year, which, I mean, he's going to miss some time, you weren't starting those players anyways. And also, if you have an IR spot, if you want to draft him, exit the draft, immediately put him on the IR. I guess right now he's not declared out for week 1, but very soon he's probably going to be declared out for week 1. So you'll be able to throw him on the IR spot, grab another, flyer that you like late. I think that might be the move. Again, he's probably the starting running back when he comes back. If you can get him in the 14th round, I think that's solid. Another situation is Spiller. I had him just like tanked in the rankings for a few weeks now. I don't think anyone watching this that, had access to the website drafted him. I mean, it was so unlikely that you would have. Joshua Kelly has been outplaying him in camp. He's ahead of him on the depth chart. Obviously, Eckler's ahead of him. Now they signed Sony Michel. I just don't see a world where drafting Isaiah Spiller right now makes sense. Sony is probably the one that I have the most interest in at this point, but just goes to show you that they've been trying to find that backup to Eckler. They have not been able to do so far. Maybe we should have predicted this happening. Maybe not like Sony exactly, but them bringing another running back, because they were not pleased in the preseason. They were vocal about how Eckler's good, but they really couldn't find that backup to him. I just want everyone to realize that that doesn't mean Eckler's going to go out there if they can't find a competent backup and have 40 touches a game. Obviously I'm exaggerating there, but Eckler himself has gone to management this season and said, please do not overload me. I want to stay healthy. I want to be fresh all season. Don't give me too many touches each week. Then they go out, they draft Spiller. They failed with that pick, it seems like, but they tried to draft Spiller. They've signed Sony. They're doing their best to try and get someone, or at least a combination of a few backs, that can limit Eckler's workload. And then you realize, okay, he's probably going to regress after 20 touchdowns last year. He's obviously coming down in the touchdown department. That is my response to people who ask, why is Eckler not the third overall pick in drafts? Why is he behind Kupp? Why is he behind Jefferson? Well, it's because those two are slam dunks. Jefferson could have 2,000 receiving yards. And I do actually think there are some bits of concern you should have with Austin Eckler. So, little take there. Hopefully you weren't just all in an Eckler and then you watch this a few minutes before your draft. But that's the reason why I still have Eckler, I think 6th, but that's the why I have him there. On to the news, though. One of the more important parts of this video. First up, Darren Waller. We have gotten a lot of confirmation recently that the quote unquote hamstring injury wasn't, really an injury. He may have had, a little bit of soreness in the hamstring, but it was nothing that would have ever cost him to miss time, which we didn't know for a while because there wasn't a lot of communication. But it's basically him trying to stay healthy, making sure he gets a new deal done. He transferred agents. He moved to a new one. I guess there was a grace period for when you can start working with the new agent, but he's currently the 17th highest paid tight end. That's a complete joke. He wants a new deal. They're going to get a new deal done. It wasn't the injury. It was not the hamstring holding him out of practice. Again, we didn't know that for a while, which is why we saw a little bit of panic, but that's not the case now. Waller is fine. Waller's going to be fantastic this season. I really do think probably 50 to 60% of your league mates are going to think Darren Waller has a hamstring injury and is going to hurt it again this season, and they're not going to draft him because of that. So if he falls, take advantage. We've been talking for a while about how I want a top 5 tight end this season, with the rankings pretty clearly being Kelsey, Andrews, Pitts, Waller, and Kittle. And right now, it's honestly leaning towards top 4. I very rarely draft George Kittle. I'm thinking you want a top 4. My preferred ones are Andrews, Pitts, and Waller, just because Kelsey, I don't know, a lot of times I see him go off the board in the late first round, early second round, so I would prefer getting a little bit more of a discount into Andrews. You guys know I love Kyle Pitts. He's my favorite tight end pick this season. And then Darren Waller. I just think there's a separation between Waller and Kittle, and many times Waller goes after Kittle. So that's what my take on tight ends right now. Don't be afraid to draft Darren Waller. Garrett Wilson looks like he's going to enter the season as the Jets' 4th wide receiver. That's not going to last very long, but to start the year, it's going to be slow. Please do not start Garrett Wilson. I don't think any of you really drafted him. We've not been really on him this season, but I just bring it up because I got questions, up to probably a few weeks ago that was Garrett Wilson or Elijah Moore. It is so obvious that Elijah Moore is the clear-cut alpha in this passing attack. He's easily their best wide receiver, easily going to be the most fantasy relevant unless there is an injury. He's the only Jets wide receiver I'd be targeting in drafts, but he's the clear number 1. You can't be starting Garrett Wilson if you drafted him this season. You can't be starting him early in the year. The Packers kept a total of 2 running backs on the 53-man roster, just Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. This doesn't mean a whole lot. People might freak out when they see that. It's interesting, and it honestly indicates that like maybe now Amari Rodgers was used as a running back a little bit in the preseason, so technically they could still line him up in the backfield. You could see like, week 1, maybe Jones and Dillon are the only 2 healthy running backs. Like Amari Rodgers would still kind of mix in maybe a little bit there for like 1 or 2 touches, but the point is 100%. I mean, if you're going into a week, it is basically 100% of the running back touches are going to Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. And that's valuable because there are many teams where you have a third running back mix in, and those teams are also less efficient. We know the Packers are going to be a highly efficient offense, still score a ton of points. These 2 are locked in to significant workloads, and it also locks them into upside. What happens if Jones or Dillon gets hurt? Now, they have a practice squad. That's why I said it doesn't really matter. Like, it's not saying, oh no, Aaron Jones gets hurt next week. It's only A.J. Dillon. Like, they're going to bring someone up from the practice squad, so it's not a huge deal. But it just goes to show you that, like, these are the 2 they want to use. They're going to use them a ton, and if one gets hurt, the backup, neither of them is really a backup, but whichever other one didn't get hurt is just going to be like a high-end running back one. So they're both phenomenal picks. I would make sure if you're drafting this weekend, draft one of them. If you don't end up getting Aaron Jones, that's fine. Grab A.J. Dillon. Just please get one of them on your roster. The Patriots cut both J.J. Taylor and Kevin Harris, though I believe they signed Harris to the practice squad after he cleared waivers. And I just bring this up because I want us to watch who they activate in week 1 and the status of Ty Montgomery. So Ty Montgomery's hurt right now. It seemed like it was going to be a major injury. Now it seems like it's not a major injury, but we don't know exactly how much time he's going to miss. If their week 1 running backs, the list comes out and it's Stevenson, Dameon Harris, and Pierre Strong, because we know Ty Montgomery will miss time. Like maybe at that point, we know he's going to miss a few weeks. That's a bull case for both Harris and Stevenson, right? Because they don't trust Pierre Strong yet. I think long-term, they want him to fill that James White role if they're going to have that role. But right now, Bill doesn't fully trust him. So if those are the 3 running backs, you're going to get Harris and Stevenson alternating drives, getting third down work each, with then Stevenson getting 2-minute drill. So both of them are going to be extremely valuable. Again, depends on Montgomery's status. If Montgomery is now healthy and plays, both of them take a huge hit because there's going to be times where one of them is off the field. But if we're getting 100% of snaps with Harris and Stevenson, very valuable. So please keep an eye on that situation. Again, Stevenson's the one I would want more. A bit of important news here also with Alexander Mattison. So basically, he thinks that he can be a lead running back on a lot of teams. He wants to be a lead running back. He doesn't want to be a backup anymore. That makes sense. Running backs don't have that many years in their careers. So when they think they're capable, they want to be featured in that role. The report is that at least 12 teams have called the Vikings asking about a trade for him, but that the Vikings are apparently pricing it as at least a 3rd or a 4th round pick, which is tough because he's in the final year of his deal. So a team knows, okay, I can trade for him for a 3rd round pick, but either I'm renting him for a year and then he signs somewhere else, or I have to trade that 3rd round pick and pay him. And I don't know how many teams are really willing to do that when they could just say, okay, why don't I just wait till free agency, sign him in the summer if I really want him, and not have to give up a 3rd round pick to do so. So remains to be seen what's going to happen here. But really, you can almost view it as Mattison is the premier handcuff, a running back one if Cook went down. But isn't he almost a premier handcuff for everyone? I know that obviously, let's say Zeke goes down. The Cowboys probably aren't trading for Mattison because they have Pollard. But for a lot of teams that have a really good running back and not a clear backup, and that are good teams that want to win, because if a terrible team loses their starter, they're probably not trading for Mattison because they know they're not in win now mode. But for good teams, if that were to happen, they lose their starter, they trade for Mattison. So it's he's a handcuff to Cook, but there's a number of different running backs that if they get injured, maybe that Madison's a handcuff to them as well. So he's the ultimate handcuff to have on your bench, ultimate high upside piece. If he ever gets that role with a team, they're clearly going to use him and he's going to produce. So, he's really just a phenomenal late round pick. The last thing that we want to go over today is Jimmy G signing. And I just want to calm everyone down who's freaking out about Trey Lance. They decided to keep Jimmy G as the backup and basically saying if a team wants to trade for him, they're going to have to do better than the 3rd round pick just because they gave him that contract. And so if he leaves in free agency over the summer, they get a compensatory pick, which will be a 3rd round pick. So why would they trade him for worse than a 3rd round pick now? They could just keep him as a backup this season and get a 3rd round pick next year. Why would you give him up for anything less? So we'll see what happens. But, unless there's an injury at the quarterback position and a contender needs to trade for Jimmy G, we should assume that Jimmy G is going to be the backup for the 49ers this season. That has people concerned with Lance. They're like, oh, well, what if he takes over? Like, now I drafted Lance and Jimmy G is going to step in and be the quarterback. Listen, that's not going to happen unless Lance is terrible. And my whole thing is, if Lance is out there throwing a bunch of picks, can't get the offense working, can't score touchdowns, you're going to probably make the switch in fantasy before the 49ers do. Okay, they also open the season with a relatively easy schedule, so it should be fine to start the year. But, that's my point, is, if he stinks and they go to Jimmy G, he probably stunk for, a number of weeks in a row, and you probably weren't even starting him in fantasy. So there's really no situation where he's just destroying in fantasy. You're like, let's go, I had a great pick, and then Jimmy G comes in and starts. That wouldn't make any sense, because if they think he's the future and he's doing well, they're not going to Jimmy G. So I hope that makes sense to everyone. Don't freak out. The only situation where Jimmy G comes in is a situation where you probably drop Trey Lance and pick someone else up off free agency before that even occurred. So those are the biggest ADP changes and the most important bits of news over the last week. You can see my reaction to anything else that happens this week on my Twitter account @NickZylak_FFA, or by asking me in the Discord chat, which anyone has access to if they sign up for All In on the website. And if you have a draft this weekend, again, good luck. Please be sure to check out my rankings on that website again and use the conditionally formatted rankings page. And please, when you download it, read the page. Paste in the rankings after you download it properly. There's very clear instructions on the page, but please use them. It's a really good tool. I've used it for my drafts. So again, the website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. I'll be back tomorrow to go over 5 running backs you should have drafted this season, then Monday for the start of week 1 content. But that, my friends, is the end of this one. Hope you all enjoyed. If you did, how about hitting the like button, and how about subscribing to the channel if you're new here? Thanks for watching.